Welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have with us Michael Delisser. He's a leadership strategist, executive coach, and author. And we'll learn from him why communication is a make or break skill in the AI era, how to unlearn habits that hold leaders back, and practical ways to build high performance cultures in today's fast changing workplace. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
You're welcome. Welcome to the show. Welcome to India in this online form, Michael. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We'll talk about leadership in the age of artificial intelligence. We'll talk about all this. But before that, let's talk a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Yeah, so right now I have my own consulting business. It's called Delisser Leadership Consulting. And the way that I got here was originally, when I was a teenager, my father was in executive coaching, and he was coaching executives that had been fired after, I lived in New York, and these executives were Fortune 100 executives had been fired, and I got to sit in on him coaching them one-on-one, and his job was to help them find their next job, and part of doing that was helping them eliminate the habits that got them fired in the first place. And so at a very young age, I was exposed to seeing these high-level executives who had been fired primarily because they lacked communication skills or ability to be effective in developing relationships. And so I got a passion at a very young age. I had 2 different degrees in the same topics and understanding how to help people be better at communicating in business settings. And I went on and wrote a book about it, which is called Leadership Accelerators. And it focuses on helping people improve in the 3 areas that I feel are most impactful when I'm coaching executives one-on-one. One of them is helping them improve their emotional intelligence. The second one is helping them identify the habits that they have that may be holding them back in their careers and helping them find ways to overcome those habits. And then the third area is helping them understand how their personality preferences impact their effectiveness in their roles and in their jobs. So those are the 3 things that I focused on in the book. And for the most part, I custom design leadership.
We will come to the book, Michael. First, okay. Let's talk about your background, and then we'll understand it better for the audience. Why should they be interested in this conversation?
Yeah, well, for the most part, the biggest challenge that I see out there, and what leads me to coach people in the first place, is that they are promoted beyond their skill set in the area of communication. So if you think about it, most people get promoted in the first place based on their technical skills. If you look at 10 people in the same job, the one who has the best technical skills is usually the one who gets promoted. And for the most part, when that happens, they don't get the training they need from organizations on how to communicate. And look, when you're a leader, what your success is going to be more tied to your ability to communicate effectively than it is to your technical skills. Because the higher you go, the less you need your technical skills, because you have people that are working for you that have those technical skills. So for the most part, I see a pattern of that. And I see people who just continue to get higher and higher, but don't take the time to invest in their own ability to communicate. And eventually that causes them to fail at a higher level. And so what I try to do is help people learn the things that are going to help them accelerate their careers and remove the things or the habits that cause them to hold them back.
Absolutely, Michael. So you said you were interested in coaching, executive coaching, from a very early age. You spent 25 years over different industries, from healthcare and technology to manufacturing and education. Why not coaching earlier on? What made you stay there? And what are the mistakes that you saw there that you want people to understand, especially in terms of communication, Michael?
Yeah, and earlier in my career, I was doing more custom design and leadership development training. I wasn't doing as much coaching. But as I continued to work, I probably worked in 12 different industries, and I kept seeing the same problems in every industry. And I can have an impact when I'm training, but when you get someone one-on-one and you give them the opportunity to really think through what they personally need to work on. What are their personal strengths and how do they leverage them? And what are their individual maybe weaknesses that may be holding them back? That's where I saw the biggest impact overall. So I eventually started doing more and more coaching because I felt like I could have some impact as a trainer, but I could have a much bigger impact when I was working with individuals on the one or two things that if they improve in will have the biggest positive impact on their careers. And the biggest challenge right now is that, with AI coming on, your ability to communicate is becoming even more important because a lot of the technical work we do is being replaced by AI or technical advances. So the issue is getting even bigger because if people are not working on their communication skills, in the future, they're going to fall further and further behind in their ability to be effective leaders.
Absolutely. So, Michael, to understand it better, we'll come to the AI part also, but in terms of communication itself, what is communication in today's time with so many different tools of communication? And people are communicating either even by emojis, even by thumbs up, or even not by saying anything. Maybe, I just want to understand, how would you like people to understand communication as we enter into a new year? And so many tools of communication. AI part will come to that separately.
Yeah. So I think the biggest issue right now is that we have an entire, generation that was raised on, on devices. And so they're getting less and less opportunities to have chances to practice their interpersonal face-to-face, communication skills. And as a result of that, they're actually coming into the workforce with less developed communication skills than people in previous generations. But the four areas, once you get into a leadership role, or even at any role of a company, the four areas of communication that are likely to have the biggest positive impact on your career is presentation skills, one-on-one interpersonal skills or coaching skills, meeting management perhaps, and business writing. And so because most often when you're a leader, one of those four things are going to be the ways you get things done through others or multiple. You may use all of them. Like if you're rolling something out, you have to have meetings, you have to be giving presentations, you have to be coaching people one-on-one. So those are the areas that I see having the biggest positive impact. When people get really well at those few areas of communication, then they can see their ability to go up and accelerate their career to rapidly advance increases. Whereas if you lack in those areas, those are the few things that could easily hold you back in your career.
Absolutely. So you talk about, that communication is the make or break skill in the age of artificial intelligence. Talked about presentation. Everything is being done by AI. A lot of leaders are, proposing AI as the cure for everything. And presentation can be done. Other things can be done. Why is it that leaders should be afraid of artificial intelligence when they themselves are pushing AI so strongly into the same companies that they are so fearful of the, same AI, but it is good for the employees? Help us understand from that perspective how it can be good for the employees, but it can be bad for the leaders, and that they have to learn separate things. Because what you talk, presentation and all those things, again, even emails, you see, the world is becoming so nice, no mistakes in emails because the AI is looking at it, writing for you. Everything can be done by artificial. Why to worry? It's a wonderful time out in the future.
It's interesting. There was a great quote by a Harvard professor, and he basically said, you will not be replaced by AI, but people using AI will replace people who are not using AI, right? And so the key is to know that you, in your future, must be able to use AI effectively. But the problem is people don't use it effectively, and that's what gets them into trouble. And an example would be, let's say you're using AI to generate your emails, right? If they are generating emails that don't align with your personality and who you are and the type of things you would say, you could actually lose credibility instead of gaining credibility. Yes, this AI generated a beautiful message for you, but if it doesn't sound anything like you, they're going to know it's not your voice. And they're going to know that it's probably something that's AI generated. So you could actually hurt your own credibility. So it comes down to knowing when to use it and when not to use it. And then the other thing too is AI might be able to help you in some scenarios, putting together a presentation or putting together an email. But the moments that matter are those crisis moments, or the moments where someone is talking about something that's really important to them, or you need to have difficult conversations. AI is typically not going to help you as much in those moments that matter, because those are the times where you have to demonstrate that you care about people, that, if you're trying to motivate a person, AI is probably not going to help you much with that, So ultimately, those moments that matter, when you're really developing trust, getting people to want to follow your lead, or even just wanting to have a strong relationship, AI is going to be very limited in your ability to help with that. And it could hurt your credibility if you misuse it and use it in a way that's, almost more manipulative than it is, authentically being who you are as a person.
Absolutely. So, Michael, you talk about that companies unintentionally set leaders up to fail. Is communication also a part of it, or we are talking about something else? Are companies also unintentionally set up leaders to fail because they are not putting too much of human part into it, and leaders will forget to communicate? Because nowadays people talk about, heart-centered leadership, empathetic leadership, servant leadership, and all sort of words. Help us understand from that perspective. Should leaders be afraid of their own companies and structures in today's time?
Well, what I like to say is leaders need to take ownership of their own development, because more often than not, companies let them down in their development. And so a great example, right? Companies are getting flatter and flatter, and they're having less and less resources, and asking people to wear more hats and do more things. And as a result of that, they typically are not spending as much on training, in particular in the leadership ranks, right? So they expect you to just jump into a leadership role and learn as you go and be successful, and they're counting on you to have some of those skills. And that may work at the first level, or it's going to cause someone at the first level of leadership to make more mistakes than they need to, which could cause more turnover, and there's all sorts of problems with that. So unfortunately, every time there's a need to cut costs, training is the first thing to go, right? Because it's not direct income affecting, it's usually indirectly affecting the bottom line. So companies either cut in it, or they don't make the initial investment in it. If you're with a startup company, they may not have the resources to give you a lot of training. And so ultimately, the thing I say to people is, look, instead of getting caught up in whether the organization's giving you what you need, own your own development. Find resources, go out and find ways to improve your skills, and put pressure on your company to give you more resources or give you opportunities to grow. Because individually, you can have more impact on your success because you're 100% focused on the few things that are going to have the biggest impact on your success. And if you just wait for the organization, then you may or may not get it. And more often than not, companies will respond when they can, because no leader wants to have their people feel like they're not investing in them. They just get caught up in putting out fires and just trying to run their business and do day-to-day things. So we need to take ownership of saying, look, I need this development. I need this opportunity, asking for opportunities and or creating your own opportunities, even by being more dialed in every conversation and learning more from every conversation, because experiences by themselves are not a guarantee you're going to learn. You have to take the time to draw the lessons out of those experiences to really get the most out of every day and continually develop and learn from, say, a bad conversation. A lot of people walk away and not learn from that. Or you could stop and say, what could I have done differently? And how could I make the next one go more effectively? Or how can I repair that relationship?
Absolutely, Michael. So if all things communication can be done by AI and every tool that is at their disposal, perhaps the only thing that is left is being human and communicate like a human to other humans. Is it so difficult to keep that part of communication
I think
again? And then that will be the biggest skill, communication skill in the future.
I think what happens is that that people are just not developing the skills they'll need in those few moments that matter. And again, the AI is not going to help you when you're helping someone through a difficult, performance conversation, or it's probably not going to help you much if you're trying to keep your high performer from leaving the organization and you want to demonstrate how much you care. So it's going to help you in some areas if you use it responsibly. And it's not going to help you if you have not spent enough time developing those few skills that are going to be most critical. Emotional intelligence, when you look at the research behind that, it suggests that the higher you go in the organization, the more critical it is your emotional intelligence goes up. And it can get to the point where it's twice as important as your intellectual intelligence, right? In terms of your success as a leader. So if you are not constantly working on your ability to develop relationships, to help people connect the dots between why what we're doing and how they personally are having a positive impact on that, so they feel like they're part of something bigger. Those are the things that AI are going to struggle with the most. And AI can't make your employee feel like you value them. That's something you have to do with your own skills, and even your peers, or getting through difficult conversations. Those are the things that are going to hold you back in your career and eventually.
Absolutely. So when you talk of leadership self-awareness, do you mean the same thing? Because you talk about these are the first steps towards career acceleration. Help us understand from that point of view and communication.
Yeah, and so self-awareness, I mean, the term itself is part of the definition of emotional intelligence. It's one of the 4 areas of emotional intelligence. In that regard, self-awareness is, do I understand my own emotional reactions? Am I able to kind of regulate my ability to handle emotional conversations and or see how my emotions are impacting my effectiveness in my job or my relationships? That's one aspect of it. Another aspect that I stretch people into really thinking about is high self-awareness around their communication skills, knowing what their strengths are and knowing where their limitations are. And usually, I could teach you a lot of new skills in communicating, but more often than not, there's 1 or 2 habits that if you reduce your use of them, it'll have a bigger impact than me teaching you something new. So what I try to do is get people to really understand what are the strengths they have and how do they accelerate their career by continuing to find ways to apply those strengths in a way that helps the organization. The other thing that I really do is help them understand, is there 1 or 2 things that if you could do less of that, it would help your relationships with others. For example, maybe someone is constantly interrupting others, or they're finishing their sentences, or there's so many different habits that we have. But if you do them so often, it actually hurts your trust of others, and it could damage relationships. So I'll help them. Really, when it comes down to, if you're trying to develop your career, the 2 things you should always work on. One is increasing your ability to leverage your strengths and knowing what your strengths are and having high self-awareness of them so you can leverage them. And then increasing your ability to know what the 1 or 2 things are that are holding you back and finding ways to overcome that. That's my areas of, I think if you work on those for your self-awareness, that'll have the biggest positive overall career impact.
Absolutely. Let's understand things from the ground. As an executive, coach, leadership strategist, what is it that leaders come to you for? Is it about communication? Is it more about something else?
More often than not, they know that there's an issue of some kind. Maybe, they may have gotten feedback where they need an area to improve. Sometimes it could be on presentation skills, because they just are not good at managing their fears, or they just don't have, that extroverted personality that exudes confidence, right? And so sometimes it's around that. Other times it could be because they receive feedback that they're not so good in a one-on-one setting, or they, a lot of times leaders they move up quickly because they're very results driven, but that same drive for results can actually be what gets them into trouble, because in the process, they kind of, I'll say, steamroll other people trying to get to the result. They're not thinking about relationship building. They're thinking about getting things done. And in the process, they can do or say things that really could upset or hurt a relationship that ultimately ends up hurting their impact to get things done, because people don't want to work with them, right? So those are some of the more common things that I see that people struggle with. It could also be that you're so people focused that you're not focused enough on results, and you end up trying to cater to everyone's needs, and then you have a trouble saying no, and you take on too many things. So there's a broad spectrum of areas where people struggle. A lot of it is tied to personality types and personality needs. And so what I do is I help people, I raise their awareness of what are those things, and then we'll focus, almost all our energy on the 1 or 2 things that'll have the biggest positive impact for them. And it'll be different for everyone.
Absolutely. Now, that brings me to your book, Leadership Accelerators. Who is this book for?
It's really for anyone in a leadership role, but in reality, the skills that I'm teaching are skills that are good in interpersonal relationships as well. A lot of times when I coach an executive, they'll say to me, hey, this actually helped me in my relationship at home with my kids or my spouse or whatever it might be. So, but I targeted leaders because I know that companies are not giving them enough resources to develop their self-awareness in these key areas of communication. And so that was my focus of who I was trying to reach out to. And I tried to focus on the few things that I know if they get really effective at these few things, it's going to have the biggest positive impact on their careers and their results.
Right. What is one big thing that you can think of they can, use from your book?
Well, really your ability to develop yourself does come down to improving your self-awareness, right? And so in multiple chapters, I have self-assessments, right? And when I design these with the purpose of helping them identify, like there's one chapter that just talks about personality preferences. And if you know those things, you can predict the type of habits you're going to have that are going to hold you back, right? Or you can predict what your strengths are probably going to be, and you can work on that as well. The other thing too is I really try to focus on helping people understand how to be more in the moment, so there's an assessment on multitasking habits, because more often than not, what really hurts our ability to be effective is we're not in the moment. And when you're sitting there multitasking in front of someone else, the message you're sending to that person is you're not important enough for my full attention. So I help them become more focused. I help them improve their ability to understand what their personality, how it impacts their communication, and do they have any current habits right now that might be holding them back, or a few strengths that they might be able to leverage. And so it's very varied, but for the most part, I'm trying to get people to increase their self-awareness and communication skills. And then I do that with self-assessments in the book. But then right after the self-assessments, I have step-by-step things you can do to immediately create improvement in the area that you want to work on.
Absolutely. So as an author, someone who has written a book for preparing leaders for the future, have you visualized what is the future? What does the future of workplace look like, especially for leaders, say 3 years from now, 5 years from now?
I believe that what we're going to see happening is more and more leaders are going to become more dependent on their communication skills. And the research backs this up, right? Because if you think about how fast technology is advancing and how fast AI is taking over technical parts of our job, all you're left with as a leader is your ability to motivate and develop relationships and create trust with your team, right? And so I believe that as more and more of the technical work gets put aside, no matter what level of the organization you're in, the differentiator to make you stand out is how well you can develop relationships and communicate with others. And so those are the things that I think are going to have the biggest positive impact in the future. And in 3 years' time, the other thing is being able to handle change and be adaptive, right? So when you think about it, change is happening faster and faster, and people are constantly, just when you think you got through the last change at work, a new change comes. It's a new process or a new system, and they keep upgrading because of technology. And so your ability to manage your emotions, because going through change can be exhausting, and your ability to help you and your team get through the emotional side of change and manage the people side of change, that's really critical too, because as change speeds up, people are going to get burned out faster unless you can help them manage the emotions of dealing with all this change.
Absolutely. There is much to learn about all this from you, Michael, and I'm sure a lot of people, a lot of leaders would want to connect with you, learn from you, be your client, get hold of your book. What's the best way for them to do so?
Well, they can reach out to me on LinkedIn if they want. I regularly post, articles and videos and things there. They can also reach out to me at my website, which is my last name.com. So it's delisser.com, DELISSER.com. And then you could also, there's a link to the book right on the front page of that website as well. I also have a YouTube channel, which is just videos of me doing snippets from podcasts and from, some of this podcast will show up there. And so the idea is that I create little snippets where people can just focus on one thing a day. And that's, if you just look up Delisser Leadership Consulting on YouTube, you can find my page there too.
Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.